is Logout, and today I am going to demonstrate my web development project. So it's a server UI project. So essentially, it's basically an expense tracker. So WeShare is an expense tracker for students who wants to track their financial expenses. It is a very easy user interface. It's a server-based user interface, and I am currently going to demonstrate it for you. Okay, first things first, we go to Firefox, and in Firefox we try to find our GitLab. So let's get to our GitLab. As you can see, okay, let's log in. So we're waiting for GitLab. Okay, let's go back to that one. Okay, so when we go to GitLab, we're going to go to our projects. So we're waiting to go to our projects. So while we're waiting, I just want to explain how everything basically works. Okay, before we do, so let me just take an opportunity to explain it. So it's server UI, obviously. It's basically about the client inserting a request where it goes to the server, and then the server does what it's supposed to do and gives out a response to the client, right? That's the basic architecture of client server. Client server architecture. Sorry. Okay, so we navigate to our project that we did here. So initially we forked it. So how to fork? We go here and we fork it here, but we're not trying to fork anything, so let's go back. Okay, so if you want to fork, it goes basically to the start of everything. Here you fork it, etc, etc, right? So when you click on fork, obviously it's going to go to your forked exercise or exercise project. So first things first is we click on the code button, and then we clone with SSH, depending on which one you use, HTTPS or SSH. I am currently going to use the SSH URL. Copy URL, it just says here copied, so we're good to go. Then after copying, we navigate to our repo. So it can be in any repo that you would want to input it, but mine is actually in desktop WTC projects and the Java directory, and yeah. So CD stands for control directory. So control directory is basically a command on Linux where we enter a repo, right? Active, an active directory, not a repo, sorry, an active directory. If the directory is not active, obviously it's not gonna show, right? So ls, so there is the list of our projects, right? So as you can see, we already have server UI exercise. But anyways, before, let's say for example, I don't have server side UI exercise on my repo in Java, right? The easiest way to do, as we clone the SSH URL, we can git clone, and then we can Control Shift V, which is copying, like pasting on the terminal, right? And there you can see this is our SSH URL. So unfortunately it won't show that I copied successfully because it already exists in the repo. But if you want to clone it on the directory that you want to clone it in, you use git clone, the command git clone, and the SSH URL. So if I click enter, you'd see it's going to say failed, which destination path, sorry, server side UI exercise already exists and is not an empty directory. Okay, so it's an active directory for short. So It's gonna show a long list where it's gonna say successful, and then from there on you can now access your directory. So it's cd, so yeah, easiest way to get the whole name if the name of the directory is too long, it's just type in the first few letters or first few words and then press tab, and then it's going to show automatically. So let's just do it again. Serve tab. Another thing to also note is when there is a similar wording or naming convention in your projects in the directory, that means you can't use tab up until a different letter appears. For example, if I say s, right, is tab, it's not going to do anything. But if I say se, that's going to look to all the directories within Java, and it's going to find that directory, which is server-side UI's exercise, right? So single, it's an I, but server is se, so you can use tab there. Okay, so we're inside our server UI exercise. From there on, you can just access your IntelliJ Community, if I'm correct, edition. Oh, sorry. Okay. So currently I'm trying to type it on the terminal so that it can access it, but okay, it's currently not working. So we're just gonna go to the GUI straight, right? So we are inside the project directory, right? So let's just minimize that. This is our GitHub again, so minimize that, and we go to IntelliJ. I forgot. Let me just try again. I think I can't just remembered how to open it up. Let's just do it again. Exit IntelliJ Idea Community. Yeah, there we go. Currently working great. Okay, so here we're on our project, right? And it looks a lot. Trust me, it is a lot. But all you have to, or all you need to know is controller. Basically, it's what it says. Controller is everything that controls expenses, payment requests, payment request sends, and the person. Models is what we use, or the objects that we use. Persistence is the data, and then the server is basically what we are gonna use. Okay. So to run the server, you can run it many ways, but I prefer running it via the button or GUI. You can use Central V5 to run it, depending on you, or you can actually just click on the play icon, right? Okay, so after running it, the WeShareServer, you're actually gonna have a long list of red here, but don't worry, it's nothing bad, as long as it outputs exactly where the URL is for the port. So it's saying here listening on localhost 5050. So 5050 is our port. Okay. So it's just gonna click on our URL right now. Great. So as you can see, we are on the login page and it prompts you to enter your email. Now, a thing that I did was, okay, fine, we have an email that we're supposed to insert, right? But people normally don't read into your email. They just randomly just decide, okay, you know what, I'm gonna type my number in, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, it's supposed to tell us, okay, enter a valid email or enter an email. Okay, so there it is, enter an email address. Now we do know that an email address contains at and then our email.com, yeah, the email service that we use, right? So login, it's going to say the same thing because there's nothing in front of it. But let's say there is W. It's, there we go. It's supposed to log in. Okay, so let's log out again. So let's go to student 1. I just want to demonstrate the one that is actually in the database or DAO. Okay, great. So now we're here at the dashboard. It is clean, simple, easy to read, easy to understand. There's no clutters. You can actually see the different catalog, the categories, the expenses, payment request sent, payment request received, and logout of student 1, right? Okay, and there is the app's name right here and the user's email, just to make sure they're inside the right account. Yeah. Okay, so here's the list of my expenses, and we have an add new expense link here, but I'll demonstrate how that works later on. So we have when, what, amount spent, payment requested, payment received, and net expense. So when is basically the date, what is the description of the expenditure, the amount that we spent on the expenditure listed right here, obviously in ZAR, which is South Africa Rands, our land currency. We have payment requested, we have payment received, we have the net expense. So the net expense gives us the total of all the numbers or all the amounts here, and then calculates and gives us a net expense. Same thing goes for the second expenditure, right? And then at the bottom here, there's a list of total expenses, and the total expenses at the net expenses, and there it counts all the net expenses together and gives us a grand total of the expenses. Okay, so moving on to payment requests sent. So student 1 sent payment requests, right? But I think before we go there, let's just demonstrate how to add a new expense, right? So as you see here, it's a different font, it's underlined, and it's a different color, meaning it's a link, right? So we enter there, and there it goes. So the description is the expenditure's description. Let's say we wanted Wi-Fi, wanted to pay our Wi-Fi, and we paid it on the 26th of the 11th month, 2025. And the amount, let's say 500, right? But what happens if I list a date that's in the future? Okay, so let's say it's not 2025 but 2026, or I punched in the wrong date, right? It's supposed to give us an error telling us, hey, you can't obviously set an expenditure for the future. That's not how this works. So we click in our submit button, and there it goes. So oops, something bad happened. You should probably go back and try again. If this doesn't work, hold your breath and call a friend. Very calming and reassuring message there, and it explains to the user what happened, right? So the expenses cannot be in the future. Okay, so expenses cannot be in the future. Okay, and here is the error or the fine print. Okay, so this is what happens. Let's go back. So you do know when you try to make an expenditure for the future, that means it's gonna come out, there's gonna be an error message that's gonna be displayed. So 25, right? Okay, great. So let's see if it's actually gonna list it on the database. So click on submit, and there we go. There it is. Again, the amount spent, payment request, payment received, and the net expense. Right. The total expenses then updates itself after adding the expenditure, and there it is, the total amount of the expenditure. And if you actually count it, it actually comes out to 900 rands. Okay, so moving on to payment request sent. Very straightforward. We are sending payment requests to people that owe you, So it says here people that owe me. Very simple language, not something hectic for the user to be confused. So who owes you? Student 2 owes me. What do they owe me? They owe me money for lunch. When is this due? In 1 day. And how much do they need to pay? That's 100 rand. Same here with student 3. It shows us a dashboard and shows us a neat table, a table that is not too clustered, spacious, very easy to read. Doesn't require you to take a magnifying glass and just like look at what details you need to get. Okay, so after that, it tells us the total amount that is unpaid. It adds to all the people that owes you and how much do they owe you, and then gives us a total here at 200 rand. So if our maths is mathing, and if everything is going well, then 100 plus 100, obviously it's 200. Right. Payment request, meaning people that doesn't owe you anything. And then we have our logout. Let me just demonstrate my logout, and there we go. Let's log in, and let's okay, so if we do remember, student 3 had a payment request sent to them, correct? So let's say we want to pay these people, we want to pay them. As you can see, here's the dashboard, and it shows us people that you owe, so people that I owe. So meaning student 3 owes student 1 lunch, and when is this due? Days in 1. So how much do they owe them? It's 100 rand. It's as easy, oh, and it shows us the total unpaid, right? And here it is, the 100 rand. And it's as easy as clicking pay, and after clicking pay, it's obviously going to remove the option or calculate here, yeah, the total unpaid. So it's going to take that 100 rand that you already paid and then subtract it to the total unpaid. Obviously it's going to come to 0 because the total unpaid amount was 100, right? So meaning you paid the student 1. But if we go to our expenditure, here's the dashboard again, and it's going to show us the transaction, when it was made, how much, and the net expense. And then it's going to update the total expenses. But what happens, let's log out again, but what happens on students 1 side? Okay, let's log in again. And as we can see here, the newest, okay, payment request received. So we're gonna expenses, don't worry about it. Payment request sent, we're gonna check here. Okay, was sent here, but did I receive any payments? Obviously I did receive a payment from student 3, so let's click to payment received. No one, you don't owe anyone anything. Okay, let's just update. Lunch, yeah, here it is, sorry, got a bit lost there. Okay, so here it is on our dashboard. So the requested amount was 200, right? Total amount spent was 300. Payment requested was 200. If you remember correctly, it was 100 rand for student 2, 100 rand for student 3, and then the payment received was from student 3, and it's going to list here payment received and the net expense now. Okay, then within here, supposedly it's supposed to say here payment received. Okay, don't know what's going on there, but it's supposed to list here the payment that was received from student 3, obviously. Let's log out. Let's try one more. Student 2. So student 2, obviously same dashboard, same interface. There's nothing different. You're gonna be very familiar if you use the website all the time. So payment received. Okay. So here the payment request received. So from student 1, we say pay. Okay, meaning total unpaid is 0 because we paid them rather. So there it is, and then the total expenditure. But let's log out and let's enter student 1. Okay, and there you can see, okay, the payments received was 200 rand, and then here it's gonna list the net expense. So 200 rand subtracting for 300, that means we only have 100. So meaning here the payment received and requested was already paid, everything is fine. And then here it's actually supposed to update the student. Okay, I don't know what's going here. It's supposed to refresh here, but actually it's supposed to not show anyone here because they both paid. So this is how my WeShare is structured. I do know that there's a lot more work to be done, but I feel the majority of the things I've hit on the nail. It's just about the data, everything updating itself and being able to show that okay, this happened, logging in the transactions, etc., etc. So another thing that I wanted to touch on, every expense has a different ID to avoid expenses having the same ID and making two transactions actually one. Okay, so this is from my side, and this is how my WeShare looks like. I hope you all enjoyed it, and yeah.